Obviously, we talk about this phenomenon where, the Chinese are not quite spending that big domestically, but really they're heading abroad. What's the outlook of that? Is that a new trend, a new normal that we're seeing now?
Yes. So first of all, let me start with a headline message, which is Chinese have not lost their desire for luxury. That is very clear. I think there are two ways to tell the China luxury story. You can look at the mainland China spending, and you see a substantial decline for most luxury brands. Some of them actually declining double digits. At the same time, there's also the other side of the story, which is the overseas spending that you were alluding to. And in fact, it has in the first half of the year been above what we had pre-COVID. So the first half of 2024 has seen more Chinese overseas spending than it has in the first half of 2019. And that is quite remarkable and different than most expected. Japan is one, but also the recovery in Europe has actually been quite strong. So in that respect, I still would conclude we still see Chinese having a desire for luxury and still spending. Less than the past. I think that is normal in the overall economic context. But it's not the end of China luxury.
Not the end of China luxury, but Jacques, perhaps we can bring you in here. What are you seeing about these new trends emerging? Because there's also a lot of grey market activity that we see. New buying channels are emerging in the mainland as well.
So I think Danielle is absolutely right. The appetite is definitely still there. The first thing that needs to be well understood is that the current economic environment is not impacting all brands the same ways. The brands that have been focused on the Chinese middle class, that have been focused on new customer acquisitions for the last 10, 15 years, are far more impacted by the current economic environment in China than the ones that have been focused on delivering the pinnacle of luxury. And I think the results in the last few days of Hermès are a best example of how different brands have been able to protect themselves from the current environment. The second point is we're talking about the Chinese luxury market. And the Chinese luxury market is far more than the performance of luxury brands in China. Meaning, aside from the gray market that you were just mentioning, there's all this consumption that's taking place outside of China. And we're not talking about just any consumer. We're talking about the Chinese luxury consumers who pre-COVID were spending 2/3 of their luxury expenditures outside China. Now, obviously, during COVID, the only thing you needed to look at in order to understand the luxury market was the spending of luxury consumers in China. But today, that's no longer the case. And these people are slowly reverting to that behavior now that travel is resuming, to Daniel's point.
So Jacques, how do you see this all looking like? If this is a trend that's here to stay, is there a particular number that you could put behind it? I mean, what percentage do you think we're going to see Chinese spending domestically, and how much percentage are we going to actually see heading overseas to buy?
We fully expect that over the next few years, Chinese consumers are going to go back to spending 2/3 of their luxury expenditures outside China, which is why we project the revenue of luxury brands to only grow at a low single-digit CAGR over the next 5 years in China, while consumers starts taking advantage again of the opportunity that they have to purchase goods outside China, which is in line with what they've done in the past. And that's why a lot of the narrative around a challenge luxury market in China is to a large extent misleading, because the revenue of luxury brands today should not be compared to the revenue of luxury brands in China last year, but to 2019 when the market conditions were identical from a traveling opportunity standpoint.
Daniel, how do brands go about meeting customers? Because we just showed a graphic there looking at the most successful brands in this market, Hermès, Chanel. They're ones that have been very successful at building long-term one-on-one relationships with the wealthiest consumers. If Chinese consumers are going to be buying outside of China, how do they meet them in the mainland to make sure that they're ready to meet them overseas?
Yes. So first of all, I think you're alluding to the key point, which is the purchases done overseas are targeted purchases. People do not travel and explore. While they're in the mainland of China, the brand perception is built, the desire is built, and when they travel, they will go and buy exactly like the brand they desire, and they take that decision ahead of their travel. So to your question, how are the brands responding to that? It's very interesting to see. There is a bit of a shift away from major capex investments. So we've seen less store expansion in the first half of 2024 compared to what we've seen last year. At the same time, we see an increase of brand events, PR events, where brand is being built, relationships with the high net worth spenders are being built, and the brands basically take a global view. And they say, well, we're investing in China, we're putting our marketing dollar behind, we're engaging with our consumers in China. However, it ends up in a different P&L, be it in Japan, be it in Italy or elsewhere.
You mentioned, I mean, a lot of these brands, they invested heavily in China during COVID.
Yes.
And now you're seeing that investment being pulled back a little bit, maybe to go to overseas markets. But what can they do domestically? Is it price cuts? Is that the answer that they can do?
Well, I think the price harmonization, has been going on for a number of years. Speaking of which, I think there's now a bit of an imbalance with Japan, given the weakness of the Japanese currency. But in large, I think luxury brands know how to bring the prices closer together. I think the key, but the overseas spending will not go away. It's part of the experience. It's an occasion. I travel somewhere, and yes, I make a bit of a bargain with a bit percentages, maybe less, but that's not the part. It's also the memory of returning from Italy. It's a memory returning of France. So I think what the companies have to basically get used to is that their marketing spending in China will be disproportionately higher, but an increasing part of the revenues will be from overseas.